In Design 3D, you can do sophisticated animations or something as simple as rotating the camera's point of view. In this tutorial, we'll review how to animate individual objects, the surfaces of those objects, and the textures that you apply to those objects. Animation is all about how things change over time. In order to control animation, we need to be able to control that combination of change and time. One of the ways you do that in Design 3D is with the Project window. The Project Window's Plus menu allows you to collapse and expand a window to show the animation timeline controls. In addition to the play button and other controls in the upper left, the timeline gives you access to controls like the cut in and cut out markers and the current time pointer. We'll start by animating a simple cube. First, we'll focus on animating its transformations, the position, rotation, and scale of the object. To do this, we'll first need to turn on keyframing for these features. I'll open the cube in the project window to get access to the Object Properties area. This is where you'll find the timeline controls for transformations. You can see these stopwatch icons to the right of the transformations. By default, these stopwatches are blank, which means the keyframing is turned off. If I click on the stopwatch, you can see it changes to show that it's active. The current position of this model is frame 1, 0 time. Wherever I place the cube now will be the starting point. If I change the current time by clicking on the Jump to End button and then move the cube, you'll see a blue animation path appear. When I click on the Play button, you can see the cube will follow this path. If I place the current time to somewhere in the middle and I move the cube, you can see the path curve to meet this new position. By default, animation paths are Bezier curves, similar to paths you may have used in Photoshop or Illustrator. I can grab one of these control handles and change the shape of the animation path. Animating rotation and scale works in a similar way. I'll hit the stopwatch button for rotation. By rotating the cube with the current time set in the middle of our animation, it will rotate from its starting point to this new rotation. By moving to the end of our animation timeline and rotating the object further, the object will continue its rotation animation. I'll add some scale animation so you can see how that works. You can see the object getting smaller as it moves and rotates across the screen. Another shortcut way to animate the position of an object is to use the Convert to Path tool to convert another object into an animation path. First, I'll hide the cube we've been animating and draw in a new one. I'll draw in a spline path using the Pen tool. Then, select the Convert to Path tool from this pop-up group. You can change how many seconds are represented by each knot in a spline path by double-clicking the tool to get to the tool options. Next, just drag from the cube to the path. The position stopwatch is turned on automatically when you use this tool. Now we'll discuss animating surfaces. In order to animate a surface, you have to have a geometry type that can be animated. In this case, I'm starting off with a sphere, which is a mathematical representation. I'll need to first convert this into something that can change over time. We have the option to convert this to a Bezier surface or a polygon mesh. Both types of surfaces can be animated. I'll select Bezier surface for this demonstration. First, we need to go into Edit mode to reshape the surface of the object. I'll grab this surface handle and pull it out. Now when I hit the Play button, you'll see the surface animate out. Unlike transformations, surface animations are always on and active, so be careful when editing surfaces while you're doing animations. If you don't want your surfaces to animate, make sure you have your timeline set to 0 when editing surfaces. Textures can also be animated. I'll start off with a new texture and give it a little gloss to make our animations a bit more obvious. The upper right of the texture dialog has controls for time. By default, the All Time radio button is selected. If we change this to Current Time, the changes we make to the texture will be applied to the end of our animation, which is where we last left the time pointer. Now when we change the color, for example, and I hit play, you can see the color change over time. All of the controls in the texture dialog can be animated in this way. You can also use multi-frame movies for your texture maps to add another layer of animation to your textures. Another interesting way to animate your objects is to use script effects. There's a variety of pre-made script effects. I'll double-click on this one named Caffeine. You can see that there are a number of fields you can edit to customize this however you like. If you're interested in going even deeper, you can edit the actual script that makes up this effect. But for our purposes, we'll just use this effect as is. I'll drag and drop it onto the object. Now when I click the play button, you'll see that our animating object seems to have the shakes. Lastly, I'll touch on animating lights. With our time position still at the end of the animation, I'll reposition the global light from the left side to the right side of the model. I'll change the view display method to smooth so you can see the specular highlight from the light sweep across the surface when I hit the play button. Point lights, spotlights, and glowing object lights all can be animated using the techniques we've covered in this video. You can combine these animation techniques in as many ways as your imagination can come up with. To render out your animation, select Render Image from the Rendering menu. From the dialog, select the portion of the animation you want to render and hit the Render button. Rendering is covered in more detail in the next video in this series. Although there's a lot more to learn when it comes to animation, this video should provide you with the basic foundation for getting started. And you can quote me on that.